Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Body Corporate 101, our first webinar for what will be hopefully a successful webinar series. I just would like to take this opportunity to introduce myself. So my name is Jamie Lee Howard, and my current role at Capitol is the Business Support Officer. I handle things like marketing, coaching and development, and business and team retention and webinars. So I have over 15 years experience in body corporate management, most of that made up as a body corporate manager and now in this role. And I've been with Capitol for nearly 10 years. Just a couple of housekeeping before we get started. Being that it is our first one, hopefully there are no technical difficulties and you can see and hear me well. If there is anything from your end, we do apologise. Please know that this session is being recorded though, so if for some reason there are any issues, then we'll be able to send that around to everyone listening in, and you can watch the recorded session at a later time or potentially share it on with other owners or people who may be interested in this information. Throughout the webinar, I may drop down my image so it'll just be the PowerPoint that you can see, but we'll see how we go. So rest assured though, if that happens, I'll be popping back up and you can see me at different stages in the presentation. We will have time at the end for some questions. So if you did have anything at all, there is a section where you can submit questions and I'll look at those and potentially choose some out that I can address now and answer them now. And depending on time, if there are quite a few or similar ones, we'll be sure to grab all of those and be in touch. Now, we may even look at submitting all the answers to everyone so that you can get more information and see what other people are asking and what those answers are. Anyway, so that's just a bit of housekeeping. Otherwise, these are the topics that we will be going over today. So yeah, as noted, it is Body Corporate 101. So we really just wanted to get back to basics and provide you with some general knowledge and information about Body's Corporate. And so some of the topics that we felt would be useful is what is a body corporate? So really starting from scratch, what is the role of a body corporate? And as you can see on the screen there, things like what's an AGM, how is a committee formed along with the roles and responsibilities of the committee, and things like the body corporate levies, maintenance and insurance for your body corporate. So hopefully they are some topics that will give you some basic information. So let's get started. The first topic there that we'll be going over is what is a body corporate? Now, we are probably starting quite heavy to begin with, but I will go through it, and some of it is sort of legal terms, but hopefully we've broken it down enough, that it's quite easy to understand. So a body corporate is a legal entity and it's governed by the Body Corporate and Community Management Act 1997. A body corporate is like a company in that the owners could be seen as shareholders within that company. And it's sort of another way to look at it, I guess, that each person does have a share in that investment or that asset. Each body corporate has a community management statement, which is more commonly referred to as a CMS. Now, that CMS is really the constitution, or it's like the constitution of the body corporate. That CMS really holds a lot of valuable information for your body corporate. Things that you would see in a CMS would be the type of module that your body corporate is, how the lots are and how they're made up, what contributions those lots have, if there's any exclusive use for lots. So it may be that a lot has exclusive use over a particular area of common property, and that would be outlined in there. The CMS also has your body corporate bylaws. So basically the rules that have been put in place for owners and occupants to abide by. So a body corporate operates on a financial year which has been determined at the time that your body corporate was registered. So way back then when it was built, or if it's a relatively new one when it was built, that date is worked in line when it's registered through the titles office. So a body corporate financial year doesn't typically run in line with the normal financial year that we would know. So that's just something to keep in mind. So Bodies Corporate can be made up of a number of different styles or setups. As noted there in the information on your screen, it could be things like a gated community or a high-rise building, commercial buildings and industrial parks. So there's all sort of different ones that can be classed as a body corporate. Following on, still on that same topic, there are two different types of bodies corporate in a way. So they're broken up to be either a building format plan. Now that's something that is also noted on your CMS, and that building format plan is really an area that is used to determine things like maintenance and how the building's really made up and what different rules are in place. So I'll start with the building format plan. And basically that is determined by the boundaries of the lot, well, sorry, it's defined by the boundaries of a lot, which is usually an element such as a wall or a balustrade or ceiling. So if you can imagine a building, a high-rise building stacked, the units are stacked on top of each other. So they're all divided then by a wall or ceiling or the floor. So they share those, they share that part of the building. A standard format plan is generally, typically a townhouse or gated community style where it's defined by the boundary of your lot. So it would be potentially a dividing fence that encloses your lot or your townhouse or whatever it may be. And so everything sort of within there is your responsibility and your property. And so when you look at the plan of your building for a standard format plan, it would be divided up similar to as if you had your own house, basically. We've just put in there a little bit of information. You've got the Body Corporate and Community Management Act, which I mentioned earlier. So that's really the act that everything works in line with in this industry. Sort of branching off from that, you do have different modules of that act. So this is also something that's mentioned in your CMS, and that is what type of module your building is. And there could be a standard module, accommodation module, and it goes on there to say commercial, small schemes, or a two-lot sort of scheme. Now, some of those are quite obvious. The commercial module is obviously a building that is a commercial, it's in the commercial industry and it's that type of business. And that comes into play with spending and different decisions that that particular body corporate can make. So if you are registered as a commercial module, there are different sort of things that can occur in comparison to a standard or accommodation module, which is generally sort of residential or in an accommodation sense. It may have been when it was developed, it was designed to have a high rental sort of in that particular building. So anyway, that's just a quick overview, and you can see there are different modules, and it's something you can find on your CMS. And depending on that, there are sort of different parts of the app that apply to your building. Oh, I should mention also, just off script, that our website, capitalbca.com.au, has really great information in the resource centre, and we also have links to the Body Corporate Act. So it's a way that you could go there and find some more information if you wanted to. So on to the next topic, which is what is the role of a body corporate? So the role of a body corporate is to manage and maintain the common property in the best interests of all owners. We work with the committee and the owners to do that, of course, but that is, one of the roles, along with determining the contributions payable by owners. So again, we work with your body corporate to make sure that those contributions are relevant to your building, and we then further collect the contributions for your building. So we collect both the administration and sinking fund, sinking fund being a fund that is designed for any future maintenance for your common property or for your building. Another role or another task that we do is ensure the common property, including public liability insurance for your common areas. We establish the bylaws or the rules as such, and we work with the committee to basically assist if there was anyone contravening the bylaws or working against them, and just reminding people of what those rules are. And that really helps, I guess, to create a really harmonious community and make sure that there's some sort of guidelines that occupants or holiday letters potentially could make sure that they work in line with or adhere to. Another task is keeping the records of the body corporate. So any important information to do with your body corporate, such as reports or that CMS, minutes of your minutes of meetings that have occurred, they're all held on the owner's portal. So that's something that you can access via our website if you wish, and access that information for your particular body corporate. Okay, so on to the next topic, which is what is an AGM? An annual general meeting, or yet commonly referred to as an AGM, must be held by law. All owners in your body corporate are able to vote or invited to vote basically at that AGM. And they do have a few ways of doing that, but the most common ways is to vote in person or to vote in writing and submit that voting paper to our office, and we take the votes that way. An agenda and voting papers for your general meeting are submitted to all owners 21 days out from your AGM in accordance with law, or in accordance with the Act. Generally, we send them out sort of 28 days prior. With snail mail these days, it's important that you receive that paperwork in the required time frame. So on an AGM agenda or within the voting paper, you can expect to see some statutory motions. So there are motions that, as it says, have to be included. Things like the confirmation of your financial statements, auditing of your books, your insurance, things like that. Basically, your body corporate levies, confirming those for the year to come. So you'll always see those on there. However, owners are given the opportunity to put forward a motion that they wish to be included in the AGM agenda. And now that's done by our office, submitting the appropriate paperwork to all owners prior to the end of the financial year for your building. Now, owners are then given the opportunity to complete that paperwork or those forms and submit them back to our office prior to the end of that financial year. And that then allows our office to accept those, and include them in your agenda. The other thing that owners are able to do is to nominate to be on the committee. So you could nominate yourself or potentially somebody else, and that's within that same paperwork I just discussed. So you can submit that form back to our office for inclusion in the agenda to be on the committee. Another thing to note for an AGM is that there are different types of motions. So basically, there is ordinary resolutions, special resolutions, and also resolutions without dissent. So broken down, those motions really just apply to different types of things that occur. So ordinary resolution is more common for some of those statutory motions that are included. However, for example, if your building was looking at painting the exterior or more so changing the colour, if you were looking to repaint and change the colour of the exterior of your building, that would be classed as a resolution without dissent. So the Act states that a motion such as that, when you're changing the appearance, that really does affect all owners. So it's a resolution without dissent. Further, that means that so basically for those owners that vote, it's 100% needs to be in favour for that motion to pass. Now, it doesn't have to be all owners within your body corporate, it just needs to be ones that vote need to be in favour. So there are different types of motions basically, and you may see them pop up from time to time depending on your agenda. We'll assist with that obviously to explain what the requirements are to have our motion passed depending on the type. Following an AGM, the minutes of that meeting with the outcomes of the resolutions are distributed to all owners, and that also occurs within 21 days following your meeting in accordance with the Act. Those minutes, as just noted before, are available following a meeting once they're processed and submitted on the owner's portal. So you could, if you work more electronically and that suits you, you could go on there and reference your minutes and have a look at them that way. Okay, on a little bit further to how is a committee formed. I did touch on the fact that you can nominate and paperwork is submitted. And so that is basically how it works. So we submit the paperwork, you send them in, and that's where I refer to nominations are called. So that's that process. And for most bodies corporate, generally speaking, it's a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 7 members. There are some instances where it's a bit different if it's a small schemes building, for instance, so if there's only a couple of lots. But generally speaking, it's a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 7. Those committee members are elected at your annual general meeting. So nominations are taken if they've been received in writing prior, they're already included on the agenda, and if there's vacancies, nominations could be called from the floor at that meeting for anyone who's in attendance. Now, let's say that we have a couple of nominations for the position of chairperson. So that's one of the positions on the committee, which we'll get to in a second. But just to explain a bit further, so if we did get 2 nominations for this to one position, or more than 7 overall, it then would need to go to a ballot. So the appropriate paperwork and envelopes would be distributed with your AGM agenda and voting paper, and that would give owners the opportunity to do as it says, to basically vote on who they would like to be on the committee. If we don't receive more than 1 or more than we need, or more than we're allowed, should I say, then those people would be elected unopposed to those positions. Just a couple of things you'd see on there, just to note that the body corporate manager, so at Capital ourselves, and if your building has a caretaker, resident manager, then we are automatically on the committee, but we're in a non-voting capacity. And further, the last thing I really wanted to note on this particular topic is that the number of members on a committee must remain the same throughout the financial year or that year for your body corporate. So if someone was to sell or resign for whatever reason, then it is up to initially the committee to fill that vacant position, to bring it back to the number of members that were voted in at the AGM. There is a process if the committee can't, and that is taking it to a general meeting to open up their votes, but initially the committee have a time frame where they can fill that position. And that's all in accordance with the Acts, all these sort of steps. So following on a little bit more, and that's just the roles and responsibilities of the committee. So I noted the chairperson, there's also a secretary and treasurer along with ordinary committee members. And so a maximum of 7, so you'd have 4 ordinary committee members in total. The committee are responsible for several things, but one is just the day-to-day operations, basically. They work in line with our office, so Capital, to make sure that the body corporate is functioning as it should. So they need to act in the best interests of all owners, oversee any issues or maintenance. So it may be that they provide instructions to our office, should I say. So they might instruct our office to arrange maintenance for common area. They might instruct our office to submit a letter to a particular occupant. If an application was received from an owner for many different reasons, if an application was received, then they, following consideration, would instruct our office to provide a letter of approval. So we really do work quite closely, and overall, but basically it is up to the committee to instruct our office to carry out tasks on behalf of the body corporate. I think I've sort of covered most of those things in that information there, but lastly, the committee is bound by a code of conduct, which that information we do have on our website, and it really is, as you can imagine, just showing your due diligence and making sure that the decisions and actions are in the best interest of the body corporate. And a really active, good committee would be looking ahead, so making sure that working with our office, but also looking ahead to make sure that the budgeting and money coming in is for the future of the building as well, and being proactive in that sense. Just on that, I just want to note as well, of course, our office, as I said, does really work with the committee, but we also are really there to guide and assist where we can. So we understand that it's a voluntary role, and some owners may have never been in that type of role or in that capacity, so we are there to assist. Okay, so on to the next topic, which is body corporate levies. I guess this is one of those things, I mean, it's a bill at the end of the day, but to understand how they come about and how it's worked out may assist a bit. So you can see there what are body corporate levies. Each lot is basically required to pay a contribution or to pay their share of the body corporate expenses. So it's broken up, and you've got the administrative fund, which is generally the day-to-day expenses for the operations of your body corporate. So, you know, your general repairs and maintenance and your insurance for your building and things like that. So, yeah, they're required to pay their share of that. And you also have the sinking fund. So the sinking fund is a fund that's designed to sort of have a, you know, hold on to that money for major projects and, yeah, major expenditure and for sort of big ticket items in your building, really. So they are compulsory, so the fees are compulsory. And it, yeah, you can understand it's important. If everyone's paying their share, it's fair because everyone has an equal share of the asset, really. How are they calculated? So it's all sort of tied in with some of the slides we've already gone through, and that is that the committee work with our office to determine a proposed budget. So they look at the expenses from the year that's been, or the years that have been, and any sort of knowledge that they or we have to do with any anticipated increases in infrastructure or electricity or whatever it may be. And they also, yeah, so they will look at those expenses and forecast for the year ahead. And the sinking fund takes into consideration generally can take into consideration a sinking fund forecast, which is prepared from an independent company that does basically an audit of the building to determine sort of a 5 to 10 year forecast and what money would be required to cover what infrastructure and facilities that body corporate has. So making sure the money's there for preventative maintenance instead of, you know, major reactive maintenance, which is much more expensive and stressful. So went off script there a little bit, but anyway, hopefully that helps. So those proposed budgets are then put forward to the annual general meeting for all owners to vote on. So in your general meeting, you'll have the admin and sinking fund levies broken up, and yeah, that decided by way of ordinary resolution at your AGM. Those motions, along with when we distribute those levies, include the details that you would expect. So the due date, any discount if it applies, payment options and things like that, and how much it would be per quarter or per half year, depending on what your body corporate has. Okay, so on to maintenance and who is responsible. It's a very broad topic, really, because you can imagine there's so many different scenarios that may arise and different styles of bodies corporate and buildings and things like that. So I've noted here a few things that are a good way or a good tool to use if a maintenance issue does arise, and that's things like the location and nature of the problem, where is the source of the problem, and is the breakdown or the leak or whatever it is the issue, is it impacting more than one lot? So that's some questions that you can ask yourself or consider if something was to happen. For example, if there was a water leak, if we're in a high-rise situation, so the lots are stacked on top of each other, and there was a water leak and it was coming from, after investigations, you find the source of it is coming from the unit above. So it's coming from the bathroom above and it's leaking into the unit below. We've worked out the location of the problem, the source of the problem, so it's coming from the tap within the vanity, and we've looked at, is that impacting more than one lot? Well, it is in a way, but the actual cause is coming from one lot and it's really then impacting the lot below. So in that case, it really is up to that owner of where the leak's coming from to fix that, because that's where the source of the problem is. If there was a common pipe that was servicing more than one lot that the leak was coming from, that's where it would fall back on the body corporate for those particular repairs, because it's a shared utility or shared infrastructure that's servicing more than one lot. So that's some good questions to ask yourself. And I have put a couple of examples in here which we can go through, but yeah, bearing in mind it is quite a broad sort of topic. So I would suggest possibly checking out our resource centre. We have more examples on there and more information. to explain maintenance and who is responsible and what's body corporate and what's owners. A couple of examples that I've put is a townhouse has a leaking roof. It's caused by some sealant that has failed. You're not sure of the format plan, but you find out from Capital it's a building format plan. So something that's noted there is that the roof is only protecting that one townhouse. However, it is the outside of the lot and therefore common property. So because it's a building format plan, I mentioned sort of early in the webinar, those sort of plans do determine different things. So in this case, that type of plan has meant that the roof is actually body corporate responsibility. Another example is where you have a garage door, it's sitting on the boundary, and it's a remote controlled type garage door, and it's been there from the beginning. So the owner's made no changes to the door, the motor itself, and like I said, it sits on the boundary. So again, there's a few things that have been taken into account. It's a building format plan, it's sitting on the boundary, and the owner's made no changes. So in that instance, it's body corporate responsibility. There's, as I mentioned before, that water leak, I was just trying to show an example of where it could be the owner's responsibility. Yeah, if you do have any questions about that, or if you've got something in particular that's occurring at your building, yeah, please feel free to get in touch. Okay, so on to insurance. It's noted there in bold because it's, you know, very important. All bodies corporate must insure their common property and their body corporate assets. For the full replacement value, of course, we also note to do that, or to know that you are insured for the adequate amount, that an independent valuer sort of at least once every 5 years does an audit of your building and provides a professional report as to what your replacement value is. It really then assists to make sure you're not over or underinsured, so not paying too much, but also the last thing anyone would want is a big summer storm to come through and cause significant damage and find out you're underinsured. Some of the things that are taken into account when looking at your insurance is the format plan, the boundaries, the responsibilities, how it's subdivided, anything like that. The coverage for your building is confirmed at your AGM, so all the extensions on your policy, for example, there's public liability for common areas, office bearers insurance, contents insurance if there are sort of items on common property that belong to the body corporate. So that's all laid out in your agenda or voting paper, and owners then confirm those insurances each year. I have gone on a little bit more about insurance because sometimes it's surprising for owners to know what's not covered by the body corporate insurance. I have noted them all there, which you can see. Some of the things that may surprise you is that curtains, carpets and light fittings and things like that aren't covered. Floating floors, yeah, things like that, temporary walls. And it's important then that you may look at having a top-up cover or ensuring that your contents insurance is adequate. So if there was to be a water leak from the roof, even of a townhouse or whatever it may be, yes, the cause would be fixed by body corporate, but that resultant damage inside, if your carpets or curtains or blinds or something like that were damaged from the water, that is actually an owner's insurance issue. So it would be a claim on your contents insurance. So yeah, it's always good to check to make sure that whatever insurance you do have is adequate and covers everything that you need to. Another thing to mention is if you're an investor owner, the public liability insurance that the body corporate has is just for common areas. So you would need to then take out tenants insurance, landlord insurance for loss of rent or malicious damage for the inside of your unit. Anyway, so there's a few things there that, yeah, that you can note in case that applies to you. I think I've covered those items there where I mentioned about investor owners, so that's just something that that's important, and yeah, ensuring that you have that contents insurance for your own belongings. So that's it, guys. That's the yeah, the bulk of what we felt was Body Corporate 101. Yeah, hopefully that has given you some general knowledge or some basic information if you're new to Body Corporate or just haven't sort of really spent the time on what's what. Yeah, so that's that. I will just check now and see if I have any questions. So just bear in mind, I just need to go to that area. Doesn't look like anyone submitted any questions, but you're welcome to do so. So I'll just hold on for a second in case you did have a question to submit. However, yeah, don't hesitate to get in contact if later on you did have something that arose that you wanted to chat about, or if you had any other topics that you would really like covered in a webinar format. We would really love to get that feedback. We are really wanting to sort of roll this out quite regularly, so if there are any topics at all that you would like to have covered, yeah, please feel free to get in contact and send them off to us. Okay, so I do have a couple of questions that have come in. Okay, so we've got a question here that has said, so thank you for this question. What is the difference between a insurance claim for body corporate versus building warranty? Good question. So very different, really. So a body corporate insurance claim is just that. So it's a claim where a storm has caused damage. So it's from an actual event. So it's from an incident or event. Look, a car may have crashed into the front fence, or like I said, a tree's fallen on the roof, or things like that. For some reason, someone's left a tap running in a unit above and it's caused flooding. So it's from an incident or an event. And because of that, it falls in line with a body corporate claim. A builder's warranty claim, if it's within that sort of six-year time frame of a new development, that would be where there is a fault in the structure or the structural integrities, you know, being like, yeah, there's something wrong with that, or some sort of major repairs are required. So it's not a sort of minor defect, it's more of a major defect and then the builder's warranty is dealt with through a totally different sort of avenue. And yeah, our body corporate, Capital would be able to assist or guide you to through the right channels and to the right people, because there are people out there, some wonderful companies who assist bodies corporate with claims on a builder or a developer. So very different. Like I said, incident or an event is a body corporate insurance claim, as opposed to something that looks like actual damage, or not necessarily wear and tear, but something that the structure side of your building is not stacking up as it should be within that sort of 6 year when it's still a new building. So it would just be sort of case by case. You'd advise what the problem is, and you'd have to look at it on that case by case basis. Hopefully that assisted, but if it didn't, if you've got more information about your particular issue, if there is one, please just get in touch. I've got a couple more questions here, so I'll just grab a couple of them. Okay, so another one I have, won't be a moment. Okay. Okay, so a good question actually. I've just had one come in, how I mentioned where you've got standard, what sort of module you are, and that's on the CMS. And so the person has asked, if it has stated standard, does that mean I'm a standard format plan? No, it doesn't actually. So what it means is on the covering page of a CMS, it will outline standard, and that means that you're a standard module. So that's the part of the Act that your body corporate sort of works in line with. You would then need to look a little bit further into the plans of the building and things like that, in another section of the CMS to determine what format plan you are. So if you wanted to, you could get in touch and we could look at your particular body corporate and I could show you on the CMS. So no, if it has standard, they do mean actually different things. It's not assumed that you're a standard format plan. Hopefully that helps. Go through one more. Okay, so another one is, can you change the date? Oh, sorry, I'm just reading it. That's why I'm looking down. So can you change the date of the AGM to be closer to the end of the financial year? The end of this particular owner or body corporate's financial year is August, and our AGM is the end of November. I'm not sure. Okay, so they've asked a couple of questions. But anyway, so you have 3 months after your end of financial year to hold your AGM. So if your end of financial year is August, which is in this case what this person has asked or has noted, August, so you then have until the end of November to hold your AGM. So if for some reason there was circumstances that didn't allow for that, you do have to apply. Yeah, you have to put in an order basically to have that, change to have it at a later date. But it's a process around that to have to do that. So you, in accordance with the Act, do need to hold it within that 90-day time frame. So you could have it right at the end of November, but you do have to have it by the end of that month. Not too many other questions coming. I think I've covered sort of those few. So thank you to those. So I've just got one here that says, I'm not sure about what the sinking fund is about. So that's fine. So the sinking fund is basically a portion of the money that's received from owners that is allocated towards major expenditure items. So a sinking fund would cover things like, okay, bear with me because there are different types of buildings, but I'm just talking generally. You may spend money out of your sinking fund on like a boundary fence in your body corporate, or repairs to a swimming pool, or you might look at, if it was a high-rise building, there was work that needed to be done to a podium level or a roof membrane. So really major expenses and capital items. And so that's the sort of money that the sinking fund is used for. Now, it is accumulated, so it's not necessarily spent year to year. It's sort of, you look at the 12 months ahead and you'll project what items need to be considered, or, maybe it might be 10 years since you last painted the building, or 7 to 10 years. So you might be looking at, when are we going to be considering that sometime soon? And you'll be looking at how much money do we have and how much money do we need to bring in to make sure that we've got enough to be able to carry out a project such as that. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I'll just go through one more question, and that is, how do I get hold of my body corporate bylaws? So a couple of different ways. One way is, if you do have a login, you could go into our owners portal. So the link is at the top of our homepage for our website, capitalbca.com.au, and you can log in there and obtain that information. But if for some reason you're not sure about that, or you don't have a login, by all means, just get in contact with our office and we can direct you in that way and provide you a copy with it. So so rest assured, there's a couple of different ways that you can get that information. So that's a few of the questions that I've run through. I'm sure there might be others that you think of, and like I said, please get in touch, and I would love to hear your feedback. Be kind, it was my first webinar, but I hope that we've been able to give you a little bit of information. And we look forward to bringing you the next presentation. So thanks everyone, and I hope you enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.